I inherited my father's stubbornness the same year I inherited his tool belt, and both of those things cost me more than they ever paid out, until the day they didn't. My daughter-in-law had a badge that said 15 years of claims experience pinned to her blazer, and she told me twice, once quiet and once loud enough for the whole waiting room to hear, that she knew fraud when she saw it. She was looking right at my late wife's life insurance check when she said it, 15 years, and she still got it wrong. My name is Walter Odom. I'm 67 years old. I've lived in the same town outside Roanoke, Virginia, my whole life, the kind of town where everybody still waves from their trucks even if they don't know your name. 2 months ago, I walked into an insurance office on Route 11 wearing a windbreaker my late wife bought me at a yard sale, holding a check for $4,100,000. And my son's wife looked me dead in the eye, in front of 6 strangers, and told me I was trying to run a scam on a grieving family. You'd think after 8 years of being her father-in-law she'd know better than that. But I'm getting ahead of myself, sitting here talking to you like you already know the ending. You don't, so let me back up. Let me take you back to a Thanksgiving dinner 4 years ago, at a table I built with my own 2 hands in a house I built with those same hands, and let you see exactly how a family decides who you are before you ever get the chance to show them. Now, before I go any further, hey, welcome, glad you're here. This is a true story, told the way it happened, and I promise you, it's going somewhere worth the drive. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me what state you're listening from tonight. I read every one of them. Now let's get into it. My son Danny married a woman named Kristen about 9 years back. Kristen's people were from over in Lynchburg, and her father Roland had done well for himself running a chain of dental offices, 3 of them, with his face on a billboard off the interstate smiling next to a set of teeth that weren't his own. Roland liked to remind people of that billboard. Kristen's mother, Faye, collected church committees the way some women collect shoes, always the chair of something. And Kristen had a younger brother, Todd, who'd gone to law school and never quite finished, but you'd never know that from how he talked at dinner. That Thanksgiving, we were all crammed around my table, the one I built out of white oak the winter after Danny was born, and Roland leaned back in his chair with that look men get when they've already decided what they think of you and just want an audience for it. So Walter, he said, setting down his fork like it was a gavel, still doing the handyman thing. I chewed my turkey slow. I swallowed slow. Little bit of everything, I said. Framing, drywall, some electrical. Whatever needs doing. Whatever needs doing, he repeated, like I'd said something a child might say. That's a nice way to put it. My grandfather did that kind of work too, back before it was a real business, you understand. Now it's all licensed contractors, insurance, overhead, different world. I run my own crew, I said. Been doing it 31 years. Sure, he said, waving his hand like he was clearing smoke. No shame in it. Somebody's got to fix the toilets. Kristen didn't look up. She cut her sweet potatoes into smaller and smaller pieces, the way you do when you need somewhere else to put your eyes. My late wife, Carol, God rest her, reached over under the table and put her hand on my knee, and that was the only thing that kept my mouth shut that whole meal. Not pride, Carol's hand. I want you to understand something about my late wife, because she matters more to this story than almost anybody. Carol taught 3rd grade for 34 years at Fairview Elementary. She never once, not one single time, in 40 years of marriage, asked me why I hadn't gone and gotten myself some kind of degree, some kind of title. She used to say, Walter builds things that are still standing long after the men who laughed at him are dust. She said it like scripture. She believed it like scripture. The thing about my crew, the thing Roland never bothered to ask about because he'd already made up his mind, is that by that Thanksgiving, we'd grown from me and 2 guys in a truck to a company with 41 employees doing custom home builds and commercial renovation work clear across 3 counties. I never talked about the money at that table, never once. Why hand a man ammunition he doesn't even know he's got? Carol got sick 18 months after that dinner. Pancreatic. The kind of diagnosis where the doctor won't quite meet your eyes when he says the number of months out loud. She fought it for 11 months, and I sat with her through every single one of them, and when she passed, I sold off half my equipment because I didn't have the stomach to run a full crew anymore. not for a while. I kept a small operation going, high-end renovation work, kitchens and additions for folks with money, work I could still do mostly with my own hands, so I didn't have to think too hard. What nobody at that Thanksgiving table knew, what I never told a soul, except my accountant and my lawyer, was that Carol had taken out a life insurance policy on herself the year Danny was born, back before either of us had 2 nickels to rub together, and she'd kept paying into it every single month for 38 years without me knowing the details, because Carol always said a man doesn't need to know everything, he just needs to trust his wife had a plan. Term policy that had converted to whole life somewhere along the way, cash value built up, riders added over the decades that neither of us fully understood until the claims adjuster explained it to me after she was gone. $4,100,000. I about fell out of my chair in that adjuster's office. Carol, quiet as church mice, had built us a fortune in the one place nobody was looking. I didn't tell Danny right away. I want to be honest with you about why. It wasn't to punish him or hide something shameful. It was because grief does strange things to a man, and I needed time to sit with that number before I let it change how anybody looked at me, including my own son. So for about 5 months, I just lived quiet, kept doing small renovation jobs, let the check sit uncashed in a lockbox at my house while my lawyer sorted through the paperwork, because insurance companies don't hand over $4 million overnight, not even to a grieving widower with every document in order. Now here's where I need to tell you about a man named Marcus Webb, because he matters later, I promise you that. About a year before Carol passed, I did a full kitchen and sunroom renovation for a family out on Peakland Drive, gutted the whole back half of their house. 6 weeks of work, best job my crew ever turned out. Turned out the man of that house sat on the board of the Regional Cancer Center, the same one that treated Carol during her last few months. When Carol was going through chemo, this Marcus Webb recognized my name on an intake form, remembered the kitchen, and quietly made sure Carol got moved up on scheduling for a treatment slot that usually had a 3-week wait. Never made a big thing of it. Just did it. The way decent people do things. I never forgot that. I didn't even know at the time that his family also happened to be significant donors, sat on committees, had their name on a wing of that hospital. I just knew he was a man who'd help my wife when she needed help, and I shook his hand at her funeral and thanked him, and that was that. So $4,100,000. And the money sat there, and I kept doing kitchen renovations, and I kept my mouth shut until the day I found out what all of it had really been for. It was a Tuesday morning in September when my son called me, and I remember exactly where I was standing, out behind my shop with a cup of coffee going cold in my hand, looking at a stack of lumber I hadn't gotten around to using. "Dad," Danny said, and his voice had that particular crack in it I hadn't heard since he was a boy. "Dad, it's Emma. Emma is my granddaughter, 7 years old. Danny and Kristen's only child, and about the only pure, uncomplicated joy left in my life since Carol passed." "What about Emma?" I said, and already my chest had gone tight. "She's been sick, Dad, tired all the time, bruising for no reason. They ran tests." Danny's voice broke clean in half. "They found something, leukemia. They're saying it's aggressive, and there's a treatment out of Baltimore, an experimental protocol that's not covered the way it should be. Insurance is fighting us on it, and they're saying if we don't get her started inside of 2 weeks, the window on this particular treatment closes, and we're looking at options that are a whole lot worse. I want you to understand something about how a grandfather's mind works in that moment. There is no math. There is no hesitation. There is only the sound of your granddaughter's name and a door slamming shut on a clock you cannot see but can absolutely feel ticking. How much?" I said. "Just tell me how much, and I'll figure out the rest." "Dad, it's almost $400,000 just for the initial protocol, and that's before travel, before housing near the hospital, for however long this takes." "We don't have that, Dad. Nobody has that just sitting around." "I do," I said. Silence on the line so long I thought the call had dropped. "Dad," he finally said, "what are you talking about?" "I'm coming over right now," I told him. "I'll explain everything. Just don't say another word to that hospital about turning her away." I drove to my lawyer's office that same afternoon and told him I needed the insurance check released, all of it, today, no more waiting on the standard processing timeline. He made some calls, called in a favor with somebody at the insurance company's regional office, and by 6 the next morning I had a cashier's check in my hand for the full $4,100,000. Because my lawyer figured, and I agreed with him, that a single certified check to fund Emma's care immediately, with the remainder to be sorted through proper channels after, was faster and cleaner than trying to wire smaller amounts through 3 different accounts while a little girl's treatment window closed around us. I hadn't slept. My hands weren't quite steady holding that envelope. I put on the same windbreaker I'd worn to Carol's funeral, because somewhere in my grief-fogged head it felt like armor, like something of hers coming with me, and I drove to the only place I knew I could get that check turned into usable funds fast enough, the regional office of Kristen's employer, Blue Summit Financial Services, where Kristen had worked her way up over 8 years to branch operations manager. I didn't love the idea of walking into her building, but it was the fastest path, and I didn't have 2 weeks to be proud. My granddaughter Emma was already there when I arrived, sitting in a little chair in the lobby in her purple coat, swinging her feet because they didn't reach the floor. My son Danny standing beside her, looking like a man who hadn't slept in 3 days, which he hadn't. "Grandpa," Emma said when she saw me, and even sick, even scared, that girl lit up like a Christmas tree every single time she saw me, and it about broke me open right there in the lobby. "Hey there, sweet pea," I said, and knelt down slow, my knees not what they used to be, and hugged her careful, like she might crack. Danny's sister-in-law Vanessa, Kristen's brother Todd's wife, was there too, sitting a few chairs down scrolling on her phone, and she gave me a look when I walked in, tight and appraising, the kind of look that says she already had an opinion about me and wasn't in any hurry to update it. "Walter," she said, "didn't expect to see you here. Needed to handle something at this branch," I said, and left it right there, because something in her voice told me she already smelled a story she wanted to be part of. I got in line behind 2 other customers, Emma's little hand in mine, Danny standing close on my other side, with that alertness fathers get when their whole world is balanced on something they can't control. When it was my turn, a young teller with a name tag that said Courtney took my check, and I watched her eyes go wide reading the number on it. "Sir, this is," she started, then caught herself. "This is $4 million. "That's right," I said. "I need it processed today, if at all possible. It's for my granddaughter's medical treatment. Time sensitive. I'll need to get my manager to authorize something this size," she said. "Standard procedure for anything over a certain threshold. Just one moment." I nodded. Standard procedure. Nothing wrong yet, I told myself. Everything's fine. Except I watched Courtney carry that check straight back to a glass-walled office, and I watched Kristen look up from her desk, take the check in her hand, and read the amount on it, and I watched her whole face change right in front of me, the way ice changes when a crack starts running through it. She stood up so fast, her chair rolled back and hit the credenza behind her. She came out of that office already talking before she'd even cleared the doorway. "Dad," she said, loud. On purpose loud. "What is this?" "It's for Emma," I said, keeping my voice level. "It's for her treatment. It needs to clear today, Kristen. There's a 2-week window on this protocol, and we've already burned a day and a half." She held that check up between 2 fingers like something she'd scraped off her shoe. $4 million, she said, and let out a laugh, short and humorless. "You're handing my teller a check for $4 million. She said the word dad like it was an accusation instead of a name. "You've been doing kitchen remodels since Carol died. You told us money was tight after the medical bills. And now you're standing in my branch telling me you've got $4 million. She wasn't asking. She was performing. The lobby had gone that particular kind of quiet where 4 strangers all suddenly discover a deep interest in a conversation that isn't theirs. "Kristen, please," I said, "just verify the account. It'll take 2 minutes." "You know what I think this is," she said, turning half toward the lobby now, playing to whatever audience she had. "I think this is a forged check. I've been in claims and fraud prevention for 15 years, and I know exactly what a scam check looks like, and this has all the markers." Emma's small voice came from beside me. "Grandpa, why is Aunt Kristen mad?" She didn't even look down at her own niece. That was the moment something in me went cold and still. "You're making a scene over nothing," I said, keeping my hands flat and my voice down even as hers kept climbing. "Call the verification line. 60 seconds, that's all I'm asking." "I don't need 60 seconds," she said, and her eyes had that particular bright shine people get when they think they're winning something. "I know exactly what this is. This is you trying to embarrass this family, trying to make some kind of statement because you never could stand that I came from money, and you didn't." There it is, I thought. This was never about the check. "Kristen, my granddaughter has cancer," I said, and my voice cracked on the word cancer, even though I'd been trying so hard to keep it steady. "She needs this money moving inside the next 2 weeks, or that treatment window closes. I am asking you, please, as her grandmother's memory, as your own family, verify this check." Something flickered behind her eyes. A crack, maybe, a half-second of doubt. And then Vanessa, sitting near Danny with her phone already lifted, said, just loud enough to carry across the whole lobby, "Oh my God, is he seriously doing this? Is he actually trying to scam the bank using Emma as the excuse?" That crack sealed right back shut. Kristen looked down at the check again, held it up to the light like she was hunting for a flaw that would prove her right. Then she smiled, and I recognized that smile. I'd seen it across a Thanksgiving table for 9 years. The smile that says, "I already decided who you are, and nothing you do will change my mind." "You really expect me to fall for this?" she said, loud enough for the whole lobby, using my sick granddaughter as some kind of leverage. "That's disgusting, Walter. Even for you." And then she tore it. Both hands, no hesitation, the way you tear up a piece of junk mail. Then she tore it again, quarters now, fluttering down onto the counter, one piece landing right at Emma's small purple sneaker, and my granddaughter looked down at that torn piece of paper, and then up at me with a confusion in her 7-year-old eyes that I will carry to my grave. "Get out of my branch," Kristen said, her voice shaking now, but not with doubt, with something meaner, "before I call security." Danny's voice cracked right down the middle. "Kristen, that's Dad's account. Why would he lie about Emma?" "Go sit down," she snapped at her own husband without even turning her head. And that, right there, was the moment I understood exactly what 12, no, 9 years had cost my son, watching him get told to sit down and hush in front of a room full of strangers. The security guard was already moving, a heavy-set older fellow who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on this earth. "Sir," he said, hand near my elbow, not quite touching, "I'm going to need you to step outside." "I haven't done a single thing wrong," I said, and my voice didn't shake, not once through any of it. "I came here to help my granddaughter." "He's unstable since his wife passed," Kristen announced to the whole lobby, playing that room like she was born to it. "Everybody, it's fine. Please, go back to your business. He's my father-in-law, and he's not been right since Carol died." Unstable. In front of my own granddaughter. I looked down at Emma, small and scared, standing in a bank lobby with a piece of a $4 million check by her purple sneaker, and I looked at my son, jaw tight, fists closed at his sides, and for the first time in this whole ordeal, I saw something close to fear in his eyes. Not fear of Kristen, fear that maybe, somehow, I actually had lost my grip on reality. "Grandpa," Emma said, small and shaking, "what did you do wrong?" That, right there, was the worst moment of the whole thing. Worse than the guard's hand near my arm, my own granddaughter asking me what I'd done wrong. "I promise you this is real, Sweet Pea," I said. "I promise you." "Sir, I need you to step outside now," the guard said again, and his grip found my elbow, gentle but firm, and I didn't fight him, because I'd learned a long time ago that fighting people who've already decided who you are doesn't change a single mind. It just gives them a story to tell about you later. I looked at Kristen one more time before I turned for the door. "You're going to want to check that account before you say another word," I told her, quiet enough that only she could hear it. Then I turned and walked toward the exit, with the guard's hand still hovering near my arm, Danny already crouching down to Emma, gathering the torn pieces of paper off the tile, like they were something he could put back together with his bare hands. That's when the glass door up front opened, and a man in a gray suit walked in, moving with the kind of unhurried confidence of somebody who's never once had to wait in a line in his life. He scanned the lobby, The scattered paper on the floor, the security guard, my crying granddaughter, Kristen standing there, breathing hard behind the counter, and then his eyes landed on me, and his whole face changed. "Walter," he said, loud enough that the entire lobby heard it. "Walter Odom, is that you?" I turned around. I watched Kristen's face go the color of printer paper. "Marcus," I said, "good to see you." And that, my friend, is where everything in that lobby was about to come apart at the seams. You ever watch somebody's whole understanding of the world rearrange itself in real time? I have. It happened on a Tuesday morning in an insurance office in Roanoke, Virginia, and I'll tell you, it doesn't happen fast. It happens in stages. Confusion first, then a kind of scrambling denial, then that sinking, sick moment where the floor gives way underneath a person. Kristen went through all three of those stages in about 10 seconds flat. "Marcus," her voice came out smaller than I'd ever heard it. You two know each other?" Marcus Webb set his briefcase down on the counter, still looking at me, connecting dots behind his eyes. "Walter renovated my house 4 years back. Best contractor I ever worked with," he said, not even glancing at Kristen yet. "He also happens to sit on the capital campaign committee for the Regional Cancer Center. Funded a whole pediatric wing addition. Quiet. No press release. Wouldn't even let us put his name on a plaque until my wife practically begged him." He turned to me, hand extended. "Good to see you, Walter, though I wish it was better circumstances. What in the world happened here?" Here's the thing about a town like ours, Marcus. It likes to think it's bigger than it is. It isn't. Everybody's about 3 handshakes from everybody else, and today that math finally caught up with somebody who thought otherwise. "Marcus," I said, shaking his hand, "trying to get emergency funds moving for my granddaughter Emma's cancer treatment. Ran into some trouble." His eyes moved past me, to the guard still hovering, to Emma standing wide-eyed and tear-streaked beside her father, down to the floor, to the torn pieces of a check scattered like confetti nobody asked for. He crouched down slow, picked up one of the bigger pieces, turned it over in his fingers, and I watched his jaw go tight. "Is this," he said, and looked up at Kristen. "Is this the check?" Nobody answered him at first. "Kristen," he said again, and his voice had changed, same volume, but a whole different weight to it now. "Is this the check?" She swallowed hard. "I thought it was fraudulent." "Sir, I've been doing this 15 years. I know how to spot." "You tore up a $4 million cashier's check," he said, not yelling, and that was the worst part. He didn't need to yell. In my lobby, in front of customers, without calling the verification line first. For a man whose granddaughter has a 2-week window on a cancer treatment protocol. She started, "He's my father-in-law. You don't understand the history here. He's never had this kind of money in his life. This is some kind of stunt." Marcus set the torn piece down gentle on the counter, like it was evidence. "Mr. Odom has been a client of ours for months," he said. "All it would have taken was a 2-minute phone call instead of a performance." Kristen's mouth opened. Nothing came out of it. Courtney, the young teller, was standing frozen behind the counter, looking like she wanted to sink straight through the floor. "Sir, should I? Do you want me to call verification now?" "Yes," Marcus said, not taking his eyes off Kristen. "Please do." He turned to face me fully then, and the whole lobby, every soul still standing there pretending not to watch, went dead silent. "Walter," he said, "plain, no drama in it, just fact. I am deeply sorry for what just happened here. This is not how we treat our clients, and it is certainly not how we treat a grandfather trying to get emergency funds to a child fighting cancer. Let me handle this personally, right now." I heard Vanessa's phone lower a few inches, like her arm forgot what it was holding. I heard Danny make a sound low in his throat, something between a laugh and a sob. Emma tugged at my sleeve. "Grandpa," she whispered. "What does he mean, sir?" I knelt down slow, my knees complaining the whole way, and took her small hand. "It means everything's going to be okay, sweet pea. It means we're getting you to Baltimore." Marcus had Courtney process a new certified check on the spot, and had the funds wired directly to the treatment center's account instead of risking any further delay. 20 minutes. That's all it took once somebody actually did their job. 20 minutes, after 2 hours of humiliation in front of my own granddaughter. I want to tell you I didn't gloat, because I didn't. And I know some of you watching right now might be waiting for me to really let Kristen have it. Some big speech. Some moment where I finally say everything I'd been swallowing for 9 years. I didn't do that. Carol used to say, you don't beat cruelty by matching it. You beat it by refusing to become it. And I believed her when she said it, and I believe it now. I stood up, thanked Marcus, shook his hand again, told Courtney she'd handled herself with more grace than her manager had, and made sure Marcus heard me say it. Then I turned to my son and my granddaughter. Let's get you two home, I said. We've got a hospital to get to. Walter, wait. Kristen's voice came from behind the counter, quiet now, almost unrecognizable from the woman who'd been performing for a room 20 minutes earlier. I stopped, didn't turn around right away. She said. I didn't know. I know you didn't, I said. That's kind of the whole problem, isn't it? I turned and walked out of that lobby with my granddaughter's hand in mine and my son beside me into a gray Virginia morning that smelled like rain that hadn't started falling yet. I didn't look back to see Kristen's face. I'd spent enough years watching people's faces for permission to feel decent about myself. I was done doing that. 3 days later, Emma was admitted to the treatment center in Baltimore and started the experimental protocol right on schedule, right inside that window that almost closed on us. I won't drag out the medical details for you, because that's not really what this story is about, but I will tell you that 6 weeks in, her numbers started moving the right direction, and by the time I'm telling you this story tonight, her oncologist has used the word remission out loud in a room I was standing in, and I don't cry easy, I never have, but I put my head down in that hospital hallway and let some tears go, because I'd been carrying a weight for 2 weeks that I finally got to set down. Now here's the part I find almost funny, in the way that only life can be funny after enough time passes. Vanessa's video from that lobby, the one she filmed thinking she was catching me trying to run some kind of con, made its way into the family group chat by that same evening. She hadn't thought to delete it, too busy feeling proud of catching me in some imagined lie. Except the video kept rolling past the part she wanted people to see. It caught Marcus Webb walking in. It caught the word sir. It caught Cancer Center Capital Campaign and $4 million and Kristen's face going the color of printer paper. Roland called me 2 days later. First time that man had called me directly in probably 5 years. His voice was stiff, formal, a man clearly working through several stages of eating crow in real time. Walter, he said. I saw the video Todd's wife sent around. I had no idea about any of it. The money, the business, none of it. Nobody did, Roland, I said. That was rather the point. Well, he said, after a silence that told me he didn't know what else to say, I hope Emma pulls through all right. 12 years, well, 9, of comments about my truck and my little handyman business, and that's the apology I got. She's doing well, thank you, I said, and I let him sit in that silence a moment longer than he probably wanted before I said goodnight. I heard about the rest of the fallout secondhand, mostly through Danny. Faye was reportedly the first one to break ranks in that family group chat. Something along the lines of, she did what? To a $4 million check. Over a sick child. Has she lost her mind? Then Roland, weighing in with his own version of concern for the family's reputation. Vanessa, scrambling to distance herself from her own recording, insisting she never meant any harm. She just thought it looked suspicious. Not one person in that family defended Kristen once the truth caught up with her. 9 years of that family closing ranks around her, and the very first time she actually needed them, they were too busy calculating the damage to their own standing. Blue Summit Financial opened a formal review into Kristen's conduct that same week, not because I demanded it. I never called anybody, never asked for her job, but because Marcus filed an incident report himself before I'd even made it home that day. Humiliating a client in a full lobby, on camera, without following basic verification procedure, is the kind of thing a company takes seriously when their own regional director witnesses it firsthand. She was suspended pending investigation, and about 3 weeks later, let go entirely. Not fired for being unkind to her own father-in-law. Companies don't fire you for that. They fired her for the liability, for the complaints from customers in that lobby who hadn't loved what they'd watched either. The hardest conversation in all of this wasn't with Kristen. It was with my son. He came by my place about 10 days after the bank, sat across from me at my kitchen table, the same table I built the winter he was born, and he looked more tired than I'd seen him look since Carol's funeral. "Dad," he said, "why didn't you tell me about the money, about any of it? You let me think we were just getting by okay. You let me believe Kristen's read on things half the time." I thought about how to answer him honest, because he deserved honest, not some speech I'd rehearsed. "I didn't keep it from you to prove anybody wrong, son," I said. "I kept it quiet because your mother built that policy in silence for 38 years without ever making a show of it, and when she passed, holding on to that quiet felt like the last piece of her I had left to protect. I didn't know it would end up being for Emma. I just knew, somehow, it was going to matter someday." He was quiet a long moment, turning his coffee cup slow on the table. "I've been letting Kristen's version of you sit in my head for years," he finally said. "I should have asked more questions myself, a long time ago." "You're asking them now," I told him. "That's enough for me." Kristen called about a month after everything, late on a Sunday evening, and I could hear in her voice she'd had a couple of drinks and had been building up her courage for a while before she dialed. "Walter," she said, "I owe you an apology, a real one. I was cruel to you, in front of Emma, in front of Danny, and I keep seeing her little face looking down at that torn check, and her voice caught. I was so sure I had you figured out. I'd had you figured out for 9 years, and I was wrong about every bit of it. You want to know something funny? I'd spent plenty of nights over those 9 years imagining a moment where somebody in that family finally admitted they'd been wrong about me. I always figured it would feel like winning. It didn't feel like winning at all. It felt like closure, and it turns out closure is worth a whole lot more than winning ever was." "I appreciate you saying that," I told her, and I meant it. "Are we going to be all right, for Emma's sake, for Danny's sake?" "We're going to be all right, Kristen," I said. "I'm not interested in punishing you. I never was." "Then what was the plan?" she asked, and I could hear she really wanted to know. "There wasn't one," I told her honestly. "I just wanted to get my granddaughter to Baltimore in time. Everything else that happened because of what you and I both did that morning, not because I set out to destroy your career. You did that part yourself." She didn't have much of an answer for that. I let the quiet sit a moment, and then I wished her a good night, and I meant it kindly, because I genuinely had no more weight left in me to carry toward anybody. "Emma rings the bell at her treatment center in 3 weeks, if her latest scans hold steady, and her whole family plans to be there, Kristen included, because whatever else happened in that lobby, that little girl loves her mother, and I am not in the business of taking that away from her." Kristen took a position at a smaller credit union across the county line. Lower title, lower pay, and from what Danny tells me, she's keeping her head down and doing her job the right way this time. I don't wish her worse than that. I never did. And Danny drives Emma out to my place most Sunday afternoons now, not because any schedule requires it, but because he says he wants his daughter to grow up knowing exactly the kind of man her grandfather is, not the version somebody else decided to tell her. Last Sunday, we sat out on my back porch, Emma running around the yard with more energy than she's had in months, chasing a dog that isn't even mine but visits from next door. And Danny turned to me and said, "You know what's strange, Dad? You had every reason in the world to make that whole thing so much worse for her. You could have let Marcus fire her on the spot and never said a word." I told him it wasn't my job to hand out punishment. "That part has a way of taking care of itself," I said, "same as it always has." He nodded slow, like he was filing that thought away someplace it'd stay. And that's about the truest thing I've landed on, after all of it. The real victory in this whole story was never the look on Kristen's face when Marcus walked through that door. It was smaller than that, and a whole lot quieter. It was a granddaughter chasing a neighbor's dog across my backyard on a Sunday afternoon, laughing loud enough that the whole block could hear her. Everything else, the money, the bank, the apologies, that was just noise. Loud noise, satisfying noise for a minute, but noise all the same. The quiet stuff is what actually stays with a man. If this one meant something to you tonight, go ahead and hit that like button, drop a comment, and tell me where you're watching from, and subscribe if you haven't already, because I've got plenty more of these stories to tell you. I'll see you on the next one.